Party, as Willow alluded to, it became known as the Free Soil Party. Another party came in, calling themselves the Free Soil Party. And their campaign slogan was free soil, free speech, free labor, and free men. You won't believe it. Former President Martin Van Buren. Remember the guy that was president after Andrew Jackson? He's a Jacksonian Democrat, remember? So they go all the way back. Here's Jackson, here's Martin Van Buren. So Martin Van Buren, who nobody's heard of forever, is going to be this Free Soil Party candidate. Now, they don't carry a state, but they will capture many Democratic votes, which is going to cost who? Who is? Lewis Cass. Lewis Cass by far is the best politician and probably would have been the best choice here. Certainly a better choice than former President Van Buren, and certainly a better choice than Zachary Taylor, without question. Well, guess what happens? Nope. Zachary Taylor wins. He receives the required electoral votes because the Free Soil Party captured many Democratic votes. And he becomes the nation's 12th president and frankly has no clue about politics. In a pretty tense time when we're trying to decide what are we going to do with this land's, I don't know. I don't have it in front of me. But he had enough electoral votes to get her done. Yes, dear?
Van Buren, his middle name is what?
Martin Van Buren. Van Buren was his last name.
And what was the last part of their slogan?
Oh, you want to write that down? Good. The slogan was free soil, free speech, free labor, and free men. So here we have, in the middle of a crisis, what's that?
The Free Soil Party.
We don't know that yet, do we?
It kind of sounds like
Yeah.
No, they sound like they're for slavery.
Where was Van Buren from? North or south? Oh, so you know where he stands. Okay. Now listen to this carefully, because we're having another crisis that calls for compromise. And this is what we're going to end up with today. Okay, we have another crisis. Okay, right after we elect someone that has no political experience at all, we start having a lot of controversy between Northerners and Southerners. There are 4 major issues concerning slavery that's about got us to the brink of a war here. I'm going to tell you what they are.
So this is kind of a push to the Civil War.
Well, not yet, but it's going to push us to a compromise. We know it's a compromise of 1850 that kept us from a civil war. Okay? We end up with, but that's going to happen.
So we
Yeah.
are going to next.
You're on the subtopic of another crisis calling for compromise. But we're not going to cover the compromise until tomorrow. So, I want you to picture this in your mind. Zachary Taylor takes over the presidency. There are many, many issues in this country concerning slavery, and these are the 4 major issues that concern slavery that people are upset about. Now, what's going to be the next thing? What would upset the North and the South? We've been talking about this whole time. All it's going to take is what? For another, if another state wants to come in, because are we even right now? It's going to upset the balance. So the first issue that had everybody upset is California had applied for admission into the Union, and they wanted to come in as a free state. Now this is going to upset what group of people in this country? Southerners, because the balance is going to be uneven. And it doesn't appear at this time there's any other state that's coming in that's going to make it even. So the first major issues concerning slavery is that California had applied for admission into the Union. They were going to come in as a free state. This would upset the Southerners because the balance of free and slave states is going to be disrupted. The second crisis or issue was both Southerners and Northerners were upset because what hadn't been solved yet or settled?
What's going to happen
What are we gonna do with the lands we got from the Mexican territory? That was like an open wound in both the Northerners and Southerners, because what are they afraid of? That one's gonna get the advantage of the other. So they're unsettled, and it's a crisis, and it's a major issue because all these Northerners and all these Southerners still can't figure out or are wondering what's gonna happen in the Mexican
Why
territory.
don't they just split it 50-50?
Well, we'll see what they do. That might be
isn't
what, we'll
California
see,
not-
they're gonna make a compromise here, what?
Wasn't California part of that land we got, so now that's.
Well, they're wanting to come in as a state, but,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, okay? Now, here's another thing that upsets Southerners. Northerners were supporting a law that would abolish slavery in the District of Columbia. Northerners in Congress were supporting a law that would forbid or abolish slavery in the District of Columbia. So Southerners are upset about that. That the North is trying to push a law through Congress that would abolish slavery in the District of Columbia. Was that gonna happen, do you think? What's the Congress like right now? No, it's even, isn't it? But if California comes in, who controls? No, the Freed. So if you're a Southerner, you're thinking, oh, this is just great. The Northerners are pushing to abolish slavery in the District of Columbia, and if they get California in there, they're gonna get her done. That's another problem. And finally, Northerners are upset because the South is trying to get a fugitive slave law enacted in the North. So now the Northerners are upset because the Southerners are trying to get a fugitive slave law in the North. Now let's review these so we're clear before we get to the compromise tomorrow. Who's upset? First of all, Southerners. Number one, Southerners are upset. Why? Because California wants to come into the Union as a free state, and that's going to unbalance the power in the Congress of North and South. Number two, both Southerners and Northerners are upset. Why? Because the issue of slavery and the lands acquired from the Mexican War haven't been settled. The third one, Southerners are upset because the North is supporting a law that would abolish slavery in the District of Columbia. And kiddos, if California comes in, that's probably going to happen. Now this is the one you need to understand we haven't talked much about. Fourth, the Northerners are upset because the Southerners are requesting a fugitive slave law in the North. What does that mean?
It means any slaves that escape the South and run to the North have to
Right, that's exactly right. Because you think in the past, before this, that these Northerners, when these slaves actually got away and ran to the North, do you think they turned them in? Absolutely not, because they didn't like slavery. And what the South is saying in this fugitive slave law is going to be a major factor in Civil War. They want a fugitive slave law passed in the North that if a slave is caught in the North, they are going to be forced by law to be returned to the South. And Northerners are furious over that because the last thing they want to do is what? Send back these people to a life of slavery. Okay, so Southerners are going to be able to come to the North if this passes and look all around and find a slave and bring him back by law. And the North doesn't want that. Now this is about to take us to Civil War. And what happens is a guy by the name of Henry Clay, who you've heard about, is going to step in, he's going to be the great compromiser, and he's going to settle this whole thing with the Compromise of 1850. And that's what we'll tell you tomorrow, what that amounts to. What did he come up with to keep us from war? As you mentioned, we're eventually going to go anyway, but at least we're going to have an opportunity to avoid it first.